Tante, Ani Bojo. My name is Colleen Heel Cardinal, and I am one of the co-founders of the 60 Scoop Network based in Ottawa. I'm here with my colleague, Elaine Kiknoswe, and we are here with some folks based in Toronto, Simona Jelinek and Ivana Iwasque, who are here to answer some questions and help us have a conversation about legal options for survivors of sexual abuse and physical abuse. So right now we're in Ottawa and they're in Toronto, and maybe they can introduce themselves and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Colleen. And thank you so much for helping organize this. I'm Simona Jelinek. I'm a lawyer here in Toronto, and I have been representing survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault my whole career. So that's about 25 odd years. I have worked with a variety of First Nations and have had an awful lot of Indigenous clients throughout those 25 years. And one of the things that I'm very interested in is making sure that people know what their rights are. And I think there's been an awful lot of misunderstanding when it comes to what's available for 60 Scoop survivors. And I hope that we can clarify some of those misunderstandings today. Ivana?
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Colleen. We're happy to help as much as we can, and thank you as well, Elaine. So my name is Ivana. I'm also a lawyer here in Toronto. I'm one of Simona's associate lawyers. I've been practicing this area of law for a couple of years now, and in that time, I've already come to learn that there is a lot of work yet to be done, and I'm really looking forward to helping out with doing that work, especially helping survivors who have suffered through, all the problems that the government's put you through, and understanding what sorts of options you might have available to you.
Elaine, if you wanted to introduce yourself briefly.
Bonjour, Ani Tante Kwekwe Wachesego. Elaine Dishnakas. My name's Elaine. Mangandotum. I'm Wolf Clan, Pelican Narrowsum Jaba. So I come from Pelican, Anishinaabe, Aki, and Donji. I live here on Algonquin territory, or the city called Ottawa. So, Igach.
Thank you so much for your introductions. And so one of the reasons why I decided to have Simona and Ivana join us was there's a lot of questions and feeling of injustice that we haven't been given due process and things that have happened to us. And in my own journey of seeking legal justice, I've spent about 1.5 years looking for personal injury lawyers that would be able to take on this case and help me in pursuing justice for what I experienced as a child in my adoptive home. Not just me, but my sisters as well. So through word of mouth, I was able to connect with Ivana and Simona and learned what my options are for pursuing justice for what I experienced of physical and sexual abuse as a child. It's not an easy decision. It's a very personal decision. And I didn't come by it lightly because I realized that I'll have to talk about things that have happened to me. And, it takes time to come to justice. So I'm here for the long haul. I'm very grateful for Ivana and Simona in sharing the information with me and letting me know what my options are so that I can make an informed decision. And we're here to help you in your journey for justice. So I guess maybe one of the misunderstandings is the difference between class action, personal injury, and the 60 Scoop settlement was just a settlement that was spread across with a certain amount of money. And we really didn't have to do anything except submit our name. But a personal injury is a little bit different, and maybe you can help us figure that out and let us know the difference.
Sure. Ivana, do you want to start?
Sure. So I understand. So we looked at the class action thing. It's the first thing that we did when you contacted us, Colleen. And the class action lawsuit, it looks like it's covering a bunch of different things. At the outset, it looks like it's basically said all of your rights to bring any kind of abuse, any kind of lawsuit about the abuse that you suffered, or any kind of damages that you're still suffering. It looked like that said that was gone. But that's not the case. That's not the way that the class action actually resolved. So the class action specifically only awards survivors of 60 Scoop for the government of Canada's failure to ensure that your cultural identity and your family connections continued, because they owed you a responsibility to make sure that that didn't happen. And for obvious reasons, they failed to give you that right, to protect you in that way. So when we looked at the settlement document says if you submit your name to get this kind of claim compensation, you're only getting that small piece of the loss that you had covered. Anything else that you may have suffered as a result, so any psychological issues, any physical issues, any connection issues, relationship issues you might have because you were abused in the home, especially sexually or physically abused, none of that is covered for in the compensation provided by the government. So Colleen, you were just saying personal injury is what you've, the process that you've started for yourself. So that's what we are. We're personal injury lawyers. So when somebody comes to us and says, I was abused as a child, or, I was sexually abused, or, any of those awful things that happen that have lifelong consequences, the law in at least Ontario's law, the legal system that you use when you go in front of a judge here, it recognizes that kind of thing that happened to you and the consequences are an injury. And so because of that, you are allowed to ask that the person responsible for causing that injury compensate you. And more importantly, if an institution is the reason that an individual has hurt you in some way, the institution could also be liable to pay for your compensation because they're the ones that put you in harm's way in the first place. So that's the difference between the class action and what we can do, which is we can do individual lawsuits for individual people based on what actually happened to them, their lives, and what actually has happened to them as a result.
Great. So I guess that's it. Just kidding.
All done.
You answered all the questions. I guess so. I mean, what kind of institutions though? Like, what kind of institutions are you like talking about?
Yeah, so there's a variety of them. The biggest one that we get is Children's Aid. So Children's Aid societies are the ones that took people out of their homes, away from their families, and placed them with white colonizer families. So if being placed in that home, you were abused, the CAS, the Children's Aid Society, it could be responsible for the fact that you got abused because they could have not checked on the home enough, or they could have not talked to you, or they could have sent a social worker that didn't think you were deserving of attention. Like there are so many ways that the CIS could have failed you. And even just the fact of taking you away from the home, like if they have taken you away from a family that loved you and wanted you, that was otherwise a good family, that could be enough for the CIS to be responsible for any abuse that you suffered in the home. So that's one, but it could be things like schools. School boards can be responsible for teachers if teachers have abused you. Priests, a church could be responsible if some religious figure is the one that abused you. And sports activities, so if you maybe a coach or had took advantage of you or abused you in some way, not that it's your fault, but the sports organization could be responsible for you. So it's not just CIS. It could be a bunch of things, but we do get a lot of people saying, well, the CIS took me out of the home for obvious reasons. You're all 60 Scoop survivors. And so we look at that and we say, well, did they have a good reason? And even if they could have potentially maybe decided that something that happened was a good reason, did they then actually take care of you once they put you in that new home?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, the
that's really
liability, the reason why the CAS is responsible is after they put you into that home, what happened to you in that home? It's not just taking you out of that home, it's what happened to you in that home. So if bad things happen to you in that home, then there are some very good legal arguments that the CAS, the Children's Aid Society, is responsible for those things, even though it was somebody else who did it, foster father, foster mother, whatever else. So that's the institution that we most primarily work with when it comes to 60 Scoop survivors. But anyone, any institution that deals with children, if you came into contact with that institution and they are involved somehow in why you were hurt as a child, that could be something that we can help with.
Yep.
I have a question, and I think this is probably a common question for a lot of 60 scoop survivors, not understanding that the difference between federal and provincial, and why the federal government can't be taken to task for it, and why we have to deal with the provincial institutions.
Well, that's a good question that has a very complicated and a very simple answer. The simple answer is that the two governments did two very different things. The complicated answer is that the federal government had overall jurisdiction, if you will, overall control of the policies they put in place to take kids out of their homes, the 60 scoop kids out of their homes. So that's what the federal government is responsible for. And that's primarily what the 60 scoop class action was for. The provincial government is the government that deals with the ongoing day-to-day involvement of the government in somebody else's life, in somebody's life, in taking them out of their home. So that's why we look at the federal government at that big level when it comes to the reasons why kids were taken out of their home through the 60 scoop. And then we look at the provincial entities. And in this case, it would be the Children's Aid Societies. It is not really the provincial government, but a creation of the provincial government. And they're the ones that we look at in terms of the day-to-day problems that resulted in kids being taken out of their homes through the 60 scoop, put into other homes that if bad things happen, they're responsible. So that's why there's that differentiation between federal and provincial levels.
Oh, that's good to know, because I think there's a misunderstanding that Canada was responsible for all First Nation people, and that, you know, they should pay us for what the harms that were created. So it's good to know that. The other question I had was
Canada was absolutely responsible, without a doubt, but they were responsible on this high level. The smaller, well, not smaller, but the more individual, that would be the provincial, not the federal.
okay, good.
Yeah.
When a person is like considering this, and what kind of things would they have to consider in not only starting this process, but, you know, enduring the process of like, okay, I've made a decision, I'm gonna, you know, take on a personal injury against so-and-so. What's involved in that? Like, and how long does it take?
I'm
I'm asking great questions.
You're asking really good questions, Colleen, like you always do. Your questions are awesome. Everybody does these things for their own unique reasons. You know, we as lawyers, the only thing that we as lawyers can do is to get you some compensation, and that just means money. It's never enough money. It's nowhere close to enough money. It doesn't matter what that number is or how many zeros are behind it. It's just never enough. It is really a symbol of our legal system saying something went wrong. It wasn't your fault. Here's a symbol that something went wrong. How much money really depends on everybody's unique circumstances. So it's impossible to say whether your case is worth 50,000 or 500,000 or more or less or whatever else. I can't answer that. Most people that come to us because they feel like they need to take control of their life. They need to stand up for themselves. They need to have some level of accountability. You know, they need to have somebody listen to them. All of those things. Those are the soft parts of a lawsuit that often create the most healing. Oh. So, you know, those are the things that I find are the most satisfying when you're actually able to help somebody get there. You know, have that sense of I did something and it's not my fault, and people heard it and understand it. You know, those are unique things. As far as what we put them through, Ivana, do you want to talk about what that looks like?
Yeah. So We still have to operate in Ontario's legal system, and Ontario's legal system is, I'm just going to call it what it is. It's called an adversarial legal system. So two people putting up their version of events, having a fight about it, and then having someone at the end of the day, a judge, a mediator, or ideally the two lawyers, eventually come to some middle ground where they think they found the truth. But the best way that we know how to get to this place where we think we found the truth is by having each side say, well, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's right. So I don't want to sugarcoat it for people. It's not an easy process to go through. We make it as easy as we can for you. So we minimize the amount of times that you have to be asked about this. We minimize the amount of times that you have to tell anybody about it. At most, I hope people only have to tell their story twice, maybe 3 times, and that's it. If they want to, we provide opportunities for them to tell their story more, but we know it's difficult, and we know it's hard to relive those situations. Those are the worst things that people can go through. So if in your case, or in any individual's case, they don't want to tell their story more than necessary, we minimize that. But there will be times where you have to tell your story, and there will be times, at least once, in most cases, where the lawyer for the CIS or the school board or whoever is going to say, do you really think that happened? Did it really affect you that badly? So, and we prepare people for this the whole time. We say, these are the things we expect to be asked. We need you to understand it's just a step in the process. These people are required to ask these questions. Many of the lawyers that we deal with, most of the lawyers that we deal with, in fact, understand that it's just that they have to do their job, and they do treat most of our clients with respect. People are people all over the board. So people will still, act the way that they act. But we have really good relationships with many of the lawyers. We have to work with many of these insurance lawyers. So we make sure the process is not as difficult as it could be in other circumstances. But that is a reality, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. People need to be aware that going into this process, it's going to bring up all those wounds, and it's going to bring up these big emotions. But for a lot of people, visiting that place and feeling those emotions and dealing with them in this way, where they get to say, this is what happened to me. You need to confront this. You need to listen to what happened to me. And you need to be aware that it's affected me for my entire life. Even with all those really big emotions that can come out, it can be a really healing and restorative process, because finally somebody is saying to them, I see what happened, and I see what we did to you.
Yeah.
And they give you this symbol, and they say, look, and this is the best we can do. And we're not allowed to say we're sorry, but we're giving you this symbol for a reason. So it's what our legal system can offer people. And I've seen people come out of it on the other side, despite going through all that difficulty, knowing that they finally got the justice that they deserved, and knowing that they finally got heard like they needed to be heard.
That's amazing.
And take control of their lives, which is huge, right? You're not the one whose things are being done to. You're the one who is doing things to others, and having that sense of control is often really important in somebody's journey towards healing from what happened.
Somebody might actually, like a survivor, might actually think that they need to press charges. Is that necessary?
No. So we have lots of cases where
Lordy.
Yeah. where police have been involved, and maybe the police said no thank you, or maybe they never reported to the police, or we deal with those kinds of cases all the time. You don't need to have a criminal conviction. You don't even have to have reported to the police to come to us. We can help you either way.
That's good to know, because I think for a lot of folks there was nobody involved. Do you have any questions, Elaine?
No, not at this time, but it starts, kind of a little bit more the wheels churning of, because some of us were brought from different provinces, right? And when we were adopted out, and where the finalization of the adoption took was in another province, but we were raised mainly in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that other, that's what's churning in my head right now. And you're right, the bigger picture of like the names, the cities, the homes, because some have been blacked out. So it's really disclosing and having that on their end, that privacy, because there's still files that are all blacked out. And then we receive them in our paperwork when we ask for our full child welfare file. So when we're going through charges, we're always asking, like, I don't even know their names because they've been blacked out. So that's that advocacy that this could consider, and I'm not sure if we can, but maybe it sets a new precedent of different times when there's been enough in different courts to like uncover all the names.
Yeah.
Because that's huge.
Really good point, really important point. Difficult to address on a general level, because everybody is so different. There are things that we can do within the boundaries of our legal system, for one person that we may not be able to do for another. That's just it. Adoption and fostering are two very separate things. And I can speak very clearly that in foster abuse cases, things are dealt with in a different way than they are with adoption abuse cases. Adoption abuse cases are sometimes harder because it depends on when the abuse started. To give you a very, very, very easy example, if you were adopted out and you were 2 and the abuse didn't start until you were 15, and between 2 and 15, the authorities, the Children's Aid Society, was not aware that anything wrong was happening. And when they put you into that home when you were 2, there were no red flags that there was a problem. That's going to be a really, really hard case. In fact, almost a next to impossible case. Not always, but generally speaking, that's going to be a really, really difficult case. If you're adopted out at 2 and there's a couple of red flags there, and at 4, the Children's Aid Society is called because somebody complained about something, and again, when you're 8, there's also another issue there, and the Children's Aid Society is contacted again, and all else. And starting at 14, there's some real issues there, and the CAS is in and out of your home for an extended period of time because something's going wrong. Then that's a case where it's more likely that we can help. Not always, but more likely. So each case is so unique, and I think it's wonderful that we're having these very general discussions, but I want to make sure that people understand that they are very general discussions, and what we may be able to do for you may be very different than what we can do for somebody else. And just because you're hearing something doesn't necessarily mean that it applies to you, good or bad. So this is where it's really important that if you are curious about something, reach out. We're more than happy to talk to you. And we will do our best to give you as good information, as good advice as we can, given what it is that we know. There may be a lot of things that we won't know immediately because you don't know what the answers are, so we can't do that, but we'll try our best to find that out for you. But really, really good things. There's a lot of problems within our adoption system, and sometimes the privacy cuts both ways, and depending on which end of the good you are, it's either really good or really bad. And we try to strike a balance, and sometimes it makes sense and we can, and sometimes it is what it is. And the more people that come forward and say this is a problem, like you said, eventually somebody will start to listen. So yeah,
because there's so many of the different provincial conversations, and the ones that is put up on Like the ones that did the commercials about us was the AIM. They adopt an Indian and Métis, and that's how I was apprehended.
Yeah.
And then it goes into like the foster care abuses, because some of us were sent to foster care or group homes or these, they were just huge, huge homes that we were just running with no supervision. And, you know, like that, there was some pretty scary situations for us as little people. So,
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the questions that I've been asked recently, and we just talked about this briefly about, you know, how your capabilities are limited to Ontario, but there is, you know, survivors across the country who are looking for legal options in their own provinces, and what would you suggest that they do? You know, and how could they contact you so that they can find lawyers for themselves in their provinces?
Sure. Best way to find lawyers is to do a bit of research. Try to find who it is in your province that can help. You can do that through, you know, honestly, easiest way to at least get a start is the internet. Do a search for sexual abuse lawyers or childhood sexual abuse lawyers in whatever province. Contacting us, we've got a referral network. We've got people that we can help that we can contact to help you. There are very few lawyers in Canada that do this kind of work. There's a lot of people who might do a case and do it very well, but never then do another one. There are very few cases, lawyers out there who do this as their primary area of practice, and this is my group's primary area of practice. There's 4 lawyers, and it's all we do essentially. So we've, you know, not only do we have the expertise here in Ontario, but having done this for as long as we have, we also have other lawyers in other provinces that we can go, hey, you know, can you help this person? And even if they can't, they may be able to find somebody who can. So so doing that is one way. You know, word of mouth. Sometimes, like Colleen, like you know, you were able to find us, and you've spoken to other people and said, hey, there's this lawyer who sounds like they know what they're doing anyways. We'll see, but you know, you do it that way. There's lots of ways, but definitely finding a lawyer who has experience in childhood sexual abuse is really, really important, because it is a super specialized area of law. You just don't go to the guy who helped you buy your house, because they may be a great lawyer, but if they don't have the experience in this area, it doesn't matter how good a lawyer they are, they're not going to be able to help you. So,
all right, that's great. I know that it kind of sparks a little bit of hope, you know, for folks to know that they have some options out there, instead of, you know, just, oh, I guess that's it. We can't pursue any other justice, you know. And justice looks like very different to each person, right? For some people it's criminal justice, for other people it's compensation, you know. So but I definitely agree, people need to be held accountable. So I don't really have any other questions. Maybe like how to get a hold of you. Do you have anything that you'd like to add that you would think people should know?
I have 2 things I'd like to add. So if you don't mind, Colleen. So the two other questions that I often get from people is, what happens if I don't have a really clear memory or really good memory? And I really need to tell people, the law definitely needs you to give a consistent view of the situation, but that's what we're here to help you do. So we're not here to tell you how to tell your story. You know how to tell your story. But what we are here to do is to help prepare you to learn how to tell that story in this setting. So telling your story is different in different settings. That makes sense, right? You have a different audience, you have to do a different thing. So if somebody comes to me and they say, well, I'm not sure if it happened, you know, when I was 7 or when I was 6, then I can help them say, okay, well, do you remember what grade you were in? Or do you remember what room you were staying in, or what house you were in? So there's lots of ways that we can help you put those pieces back together in a way that makes sense here. So I always encourage people who think that maybe, you know, because they don't remember everything, or they don't remember everything in perfect order, or they don't recall if it was, you know, Tuesday, February 25th or whatever, that this one event happened. I have dealt with a lot of people who couldn't even think to say, well, I think it was the winter when I was 8. And we've worked through it carefully, and I, you know, without coaching and without telling them what to remember, and being completely careful to make sure that it's your story, I help people put the pieces back together so that we can present it the way that it needs to be presented. And it's all truthful. It's just, you know, there are different ways of telling the truth according to the legal system. So I help you do that. And the other thing that I want to say is, people also worry that they have to be at a certain stage in their healing, and they have to be either healed all the way, or, you know, this can be part of a healing process for people. So if people are early in their healing, or they just want to get started, or, you know, maybe they haven't had a chance to because they've been raising a family, or trying to find their family, or dealing with all kinds of issues, like maybe they have substance abuse or homelessness, or they got somehow sucked into the criminal system. At whatever stage of healing you're at, it doesn't matter. We can help you. You don't need to be healed. You know, if you are, and that's what you need before you can start this process, great, power to you. And I'm happy to talk to people that have worked on their healing process. It brings me joy to know that people have recovered some part of themselves. But if you haven't, that's okay.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I've got one last thing to add. What we can do for you is to give you information. And initially, anyways, when we give you this information, we're not going to charge you for it. So you do not have to worry about whether or not you're going to get a bill from us. You're not. Absolutely, you're not. We will work with you to try to give you what all of your options are. And then based on those options, you can decide what to do. And if what that means is that you decide to hire us, then we can talk about what that is going to look like in terms of payment. But I can also tell you at that point that more often than not, we don't expect you to pay us as we deal with your case. Most people, very, very few people, have the ability to pay a lawyer for a full-blown case that lasts years and years and years. We generally come up with an agreement that's called a contingency agreement, where you pay us at the end. So you don't have to worry about that. That is not what should stop you from at least getting the information. Once you've got the information, that's a different thing. But we will do what we can to make sure that if you come to us and you have questions, we will do what we can to answer those questions and to try to get you the help that you need. We've got a wonderful intake coordinator who will sit, who will talk to you, who will guide you through this process, who will then coordinate so that you're talking to the people that can help you. So you do not have to worry about money. Do not let that be a barrier at all.
Yeah, and if people are nervous, they're going to be talking to me mostly. So I'll mostly be the one handling the cases, especially in Ontario. So it's me. I will, you know, be the same person.
Yeah.
And I can attest that, you know, when I was looking for a lawyer, I definitely wanted folks to understand, you know, that the issues of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people in Canada and what's happened to us, the process and positionality, of course, and allyship. Those were extremely important to me, because sometimes we deal with folks who just don't care. But I can say that, you know, my journey with you has been, I knew right away that, you know, you were exceptional, and not just in how you represent people, but in how you are able to communicate with me, and consider my needs and meet me where I'm at, right? Whether I'm partly healed or fully healed or just starting this journey, like, I really appreciate that. And your willingness to do this outreach as well. For me, it's everything that we can do to help other folks who need this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for trusting us, Colleen. Really, we're really privileged that you trust us, and honored.
Very much so. Very, very much so. It means so much to us that you've chosen us, and that you have enough initial faith and trust in us that you're willing to allow us to help others. That's more thanks than we're ever going to get. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Really
I'm
hope that, sorry, I really hope that other folks, who may reach out to you, have the same experience, but across the country, set the standard for exemplary service for, First Nation folks, and Inuit and Métis folks who need lawyers like you guys.
This is why we always try to make sure that if we can't help, we find you somebody who we trust to be able to help you. Because there are some excellent lawyers in other provinces, absolutely. We just want to make sure that you find the people that can actually help you the place that you need them to help you. So,
yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, I just want to say, if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to either myself or Elaine. I'm sure there'll be email addresses to reach out to Ivana and Simona. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for
Thank
listening
you.
and sharing. And
Thank you,
just
Elaine.
amazing. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you.